Lyriel Voss had always prided herself on her sharp mind and quick wit. As the lead neuroengineer at Synaptech Industries, she'd pushed the boundaries of brain-computer interfaces further than anyone thought possible. But nothing could have prepared her for the day when her own thoughts began to betray her. It started with a whisper, barely audible above the hum of her lab equipment. A voice that wasn't quite her own, urging her to make subtle changes to the code scrolling across her holodisplay. At first, she dismissed it as stress-induced auditory hallucinations, a common enough occurrence in her high-pressure field. But as the days wore on, the whispers grew more insistent. More alien. Dr. Voss, are you feeling all right? Kaylin, her assistant, peered at her with concern. You've been staring at that same line of code for 10 minutes. Lyriel blinked, realizing she'd completely zoned out. I'm fine, she lied, forcing a smile. Just lost in thought. Kaylin nodded, unconvinced. Maybe you should take a break? You've been pulling a lot of all-nighters lately. Maybe you should mind your own business. The words exploded from Lyriel's mouth before she could stop them, dripping with a venom she'd never felt before. Kaylin recoiled, eyes wide with shock. I'm sorry, Lyriel stammered, horrified at her own outburst. I don't know where that came from. Please, just give me a moment alone. As Kaylin hurried from the lab, Lyriel clutched her head, trying to make sense of the conflicting impulses warring inside her mind. What was happening to her? Across the city, in a bustling coffee shop, Ezra Thorne was having a similar crisis. The normally cheerful barista found himself snapping at customers, his hands shaking as he tried to focus on brewing lattes and cappuccinos. The cacophony of voices in his head grew louder with each passing hour, drowning out the ambient chatter of the cafe. Large mocha for Jaina, he called out, wincing at the spike of pain behind his eyes. A suited woman approached the counter, frowning as she examined her drink. I ordered this with soy milk, she said, her tone clipped and impatient. Ezra felt a surge of rage bubble up from somewhere deep inside him. His vision blurred, tinged with red. Then maybe you should learn to speak more clearly. You entitled B-dash. He bit down on his tongue, hard, using the shock of pain to wrestle back control. I'm so sorry, he gasped, already remaking the drink with trembling hands. I don't know what came over me. Please, it's on the house. The woman huffed and stormed off, leaving Ezra to slump against the counter, fighting waves of nausea and confusion. This wasn't like him at all. It felt like something was trying to rewire his very personality, overriding his usual easygoing nature with flashes of inexplicable anger and paranoia. Little did Ezra know, but similar scenes were playing out all across the globe. In boardrooms and classrooms, on factory floors and in government offices, people found themselves battling intrusive thoughts and violent impulses. The change was subtle at first, a short temper here, a moment of uncharacteristic cruelty there. But as the days turned to weeks, the altered behaviors became impossible to ignore. Dr. Amara Okafor, the World Health Organization's top epidemiologist, stared at the reports flooding her screen with growing dread. Emergency room visits for sudden onset psychiatric symptoms had skyrocketed worldwide. Violent crime rates were spiking in usually peaceful communities. And most disturbingly, there seemed to be no clear pattern to who was affected. It's not a pathogen, she murmured, rubbing her temples. At least, not one we can detect. So what in the world is causing this? As if in answer, a searing pain lanced through her skull. Amara gasped, doubling over as a chorus of alien whispers filled her mind. For a moment, she could have sworn she saw strange, shadowy figures at the edges of her vision, spindly, inhuman shapes that vanished when she tried to focus on them. No, she whimpered, squeezing her eyes shut. This isn't real. I'm just overtired. I'm imagining things. But deep down, a part of her knew the truth. Whatever was happening, it was far beyond the scope of any earthly epidemic. Humanity was under attack, and the battlefield was inside their own minds. In a top-secret military bunker halfway across the world, General Reese Blackwood slammed his fist on the table, causing the assembled officers to jump. I don't care if it sounds crazy, he roared. Something is trying to control us. and we need to figure out what the hell it is before it's too late." The room fell silent, the tension palpable. Finally, a young lieutenant spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sir, what if it already is?" As if to punctuate her words, the bunker's alarms began to blare. Red emergency lights bathed the room in an eerie glow as panicked shouts echoed from the corridors outside. "We've got multiple breaches in sectors 3 and 7, someone yelled. "It's our own people. They've gone completely berserk." General Blackwood's face hardened into a mask of grim resolve. "Lock it down," he ordered. "Full quarantine protocols. No one gets in or out until we get a handle on the situation." As the bunker descended into chaos, Blackwood allowed himself a moment of quiet despair. He'd spent his entire career preparing for every conceivable threat to national security. But how do you fight an enemy that turns your own mind against you? The silent invasion had begun, and humanity's greatest battle would be fought not with guns or bombs, but with the very essence of what made them human. Their thoughts, their free will, their inner voices. Little did they know, the true test was only just beginning. The world had changed, seemingly overnight. Streets once bustling with life now lay eerily quiet, save for the occasional scream or shattering glass. Those still sane enough to venture outside did so with wary eyes and racing hearts, never knowing when a neighbor or loved one might suddenly turn violent. Zane Archer, former Special Forces operative turned private security consultant, crouched in the shadows of an abandoned subway station. His breath came in ragged gasps, sweat beading on his forehead despite the chill in the air. For days, he'd been fighting the voices in his head, dark whispers urging him to give in, to embrace the chaos. "I won't," he growled through gritted teeth. "You can't control me." A skittering sound echoed through the tunnel, and Zane's hand instinctively went to the pistol at his hip. His eyes strained in the dim light, searching for any sign of movement. "Hello?" A trembling voice called out. Is anyone there?" Zane's finger tightened on the trigger. Part of him, a part that felt alien and wrong, screamed to shoot first and ask questions later. But he forced that impulse down, choosing instead to respond. "I'm here," he said cautiously. "Are you yourself?" A figure emerged from the darkness, a young woman, her clothes torn and dirty, eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperate hope. "I think so," she said. "I'm Naya." The voices, they're getting louder. "I don't know how much longer I can fight them." Zane nodded grimly. "I know the feeling, but we have to keep fighting. Come on, I know a place that might be safe." As they made their way through the labyrinth of abandoned tunnels, Naya explained how she'd fled her home when her parents succumbed to the madness. "It was like something else was controlling them," she whispered. "Their eyes, they weren't human anymore." Zane was about to respond when a piercing shriek cut through the air. Both of them froze, hearts pounding. The sound came again, closer this time, accompanied by the slap of bare feet on concrete. "Run!" Zane yelled, grabbing Naya's hand and pulling her into a sprint. They raced through the tunnels, the inhuman howls growing louder behind them. Zane's military training kicked in, his mind calculating escape routes even as the alien whispers tried to cloud his thoughts. "There," he gasped, pointing to a maintenance door. They burst through it, slamming it shut just as their pursuers rounded the corner. Bang! 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 The door shuddered under the impact of fists and bodies. Zane braced himself against it, muscles straining. "We can't stay here," he grunted. "We need to find a way out." Naya's eyes darted around the small room, finally settling on a rusty ladder leading up to a manhole cover. "There? But, oh God, we'll be exposed up there." Zane nodded grimly. "No choice. You go first. I'll hold them off as long as I can." As Naya scrambled up the ladder, Zane took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he had to do. He pulled a grenade from his belt, a last resort he'd hoped never to use. With a silent prayer, he pulled the pin and rolled it towards the door just as it began to splinter. "Now," he roared, leaping for the ladder. Naya pushed the manhole cover aside, and they erupted onto the street above just as the explosion rocked the tunnel below. For a moment, they lay there gasping, the sudden daylight blinding after the darkness of the subway. But there was no time to rest. The city around them was a war zone, abandoned cars, shattered windows, and in the distance, pillars of smoke rising into the sky. "We need to keep moving," Zane said, helping Naya to her feet. "I have a safe house not far from here. If we're lucky, it hasn't been compromised." As they picked their way through the debris-strewn streets, both of them fought a constant battle in their minds. The alien presence seemed to grow stronger with each passing hour, probing for weaknesses, seeking any crack in their mental defenses. "How?" Naya whispered as they ducked behind an overturned bus to avoid a group of shambling, wild-eyed people. "How are you resisting it so well?" Zane's face was a mask of concentration. "Training," he said tersely. "Years of withstanding psychological warfare and torture. But even I don't know how much longer I can hold out. Whatever this is, it's like nothing I've ever encountered." They pressed on, every step a struggle against their own traitorous thoughts. The voices whispered promises of power, of release from all pain and worry. All they had to do was give in, to surrender their will. "No!" Zane roared suddenly, causing Naya to jump. He clutched his head, eyes squeezed shut in agony. I won't. Naya grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to look at her. "Stay with me, Zane. Focus on my voice. You're stronger than this. We're stronger than this." For a terrifying moment, Zane's eyes glazed over, and his hand twitched towards his weapon. But then he blinked, clarity returning. "Thank you," he gasped. I could feel myself slipping away. They continued on, supporting each other both physically and mentally. The safe house was tantalizingly close now, just a few blocks away. But as they rounded a corner, both of them stopped short, hearts sinking. The street before them was filled with a seething mass of humanity, or what used to be humanity. Hundreds of people milled about, their movements jerky and unnatural, eyes blank and unseeing. And at the center of it all, what the hell is that? Naya breathed. A pulsing, otherworldly light emanated from a point in the middle of the crowd. As they watched in horror, tendrils of energy snaked out, latching onto the foreheads of those nearby. Each person touched by the light convulsed, then went rigid, their eyes glowing with the same unearthly radiance. "That's it," Zane said, his voice a mix of awe and dread. "That's the source. Whatever's controlling people, it's coming from that." Naya turned to him, her face pale but determined. "So, what do we do?" Zane's jaw clenched as he surveyed the scene before them. The safe house was so close, offering the promise of shelter and supplies. But could they really turn their backs on what might be their only chance to strike at the heart of this invasion? "We fight," he said finally, checking his weapons. "It's insane, and we'll probably die, but we fight. Because if we run and hide, then humanity is lost." Naya nodded, a grim smile playing at her lips. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they prepared to plunge into the madness before them, neither Zane nor Naya noticed the shadowy figures watching from nearby rooftops. Spindly, inhuman shapes that chittered and clicked in an incomprehensible language. The battle for humanity's soul was about to begin in earnest, and the universe itself held its breath, waiting to see if the unbreakable human spirit could withstand its greatest test yet. The alien light pulsed hypnotically, casting eerie shadows across the sea of blank-faced humans. Zane and Naya crouched behind an overturned car, hearts pounding as they formulated their desperate plan. "We need a distraction," Zane whispered, his eyes never leaving the writhing mass of controlled bodies. "Something to draw their attention while we make a run for that thing." Naya nodded, her face set with grim determination. "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." Before Zane could protest, Naya stood up, took a deep breath, and let out a blood-curdling scream. "Hey, over here! You mind-controlled freaks! Are you insane?" Zane hissed, but it was too late. The sea of bodies turned as one, hollow eyes fixing on Naya's position. "Now!" she yelled, already sprinting away from their hiding spot. "Go!" Cursing under his breath, Zane vaulted over the car and charged towards the pulsing light. The controlled humans moved to intercept him, but their movements were slow, puppet-like. He ducked and weaved through grasping hands, his special forces training kicking in as he expertly incapacitated those who got too close. The alien presence in his mind screamed, redoubling its efforts to take control. Zane gritted his teeth, focusing on one thought to keep himself anchored: destroy the light. Save humanity. He was almost there, mere feet from the source of the otherworldly glow, when a familiar voice cut through the chaos. "Zane! Help!" He turned to see Naya, surrounded by a group of the controlled, their hands clawing at her as she fought desperately to break free. For a split second, Zane hesitated, torn between his mission and the need to save his newfound ally. That moment of distraction was all the alien presence needed. Pain exploded behind Zane's eyes as he felt his control slipping away. "No!" He screamed internally, but it was like trying to hold on to smoke. He could feel himself falling into a vast, dark void. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the mental maelstrom. But this one was different. Not the alien whispers, but something familiar. "Get up, soldier," the voice barked. "I didn't train you to give up when things got tough." With a jolt, Zane recognized the voice of his old drill sergeant, Sergeant Coda. The grizzled veteran had put Zane through hell during training, pushing him to limits he never thought possible. "That's it, Archer," the memory of Coda growled. "Fight back. You're stronger than this alien bullshit." Something sparked deep within Zane's psyche. A primal, uniquely human force that refused to be extinguished. With a roar of defiance, he pushed back against the invading presence, reclaiming control of his mind inch by agonizing inch. "I am human," Zane bellowed, his voice echoing across the suddenly silent street. The alien light flickered, as if recoiling from the sheer force of his will. In that moment of weakness, Zane struck. He lunged forward, hands closing around the pulsing orb at the center of the light. It burned like ice and fire simultaneously, sending waves of agony through his body. But he held on, squeezing with all his might. Crack! The orb shattered, releasing a blinding flash of energy that knocked Zane off his feet. He hit the ground hard, the world spinning around him as darkness crept in at the edges of his vision. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the controlled humans collapsing like puppets with cut strings and a familiar figure running towards him. Zane awoke to the sound of hushed voices and the antiseptic smell of a makeshift medical facility. He blinked, trying to focus on his surroundings. "Welcome back to the land of the living, hero," a familiar voice said. Naya's face swam into view, bruised but smiling. What happened?" Zane croaked, his throat raw. "You did it," Naya said softly. "You destroyed that alien device. When it shattered, it released some kind of energy pulse that knocked out their control. People are waking up all over the city, confused but free." Zane tried to sit up, wincing at the pain that shot through his body. "But how did I resist? I felt myself slipping away. And then you found your anchor," a new voice interjected. An older woman in a lab coat approached, her eyes sharp behind thick glasses. "I'm Dr. Ilera Vin. I've been studying the victims and the survivors." She pulled up a chair, her expression intense. "What you experienced, Mr. Archer, is what we're calling psychic echoes. It seems that in moments of extreme stress, some people are able to tap into their deepest memories and emotions, creating a sort of mental antibody against the alien influence." Zane nodded slowly, remembering the voice of his old drill sergeant. "But why didn't it work for everyone?" Dr. Vin sighed. "We're still trying to figure that out. It seems that those with strong willpower or who have undergone intense mental conditioning are more resistant. But it's not foolproof. The alien presence is adaptable." A grim silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. They won a battle, but the war was far from over. "So what now?" Naya asked, voicing the question on everyone's mind. Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A frantic voice came over the intercom. "Multiple bogies incoming. Unknown aircraft approaching from all directions." Dr. Vin's face paled. "They're here," she whispered. The source of the mind control? They've finally decided to show themselves. Zane forced himself to his feet, ignoring the protests of his battered body. "Then we fight," he said, his voice hard with resolve. "We've proven that humanity can resist their control. Now it's time to show them what happens when they push us too far." As they rushed to prepare for the coming battle, none of them noticed the small, spider-like device clinging to the shadows in the corner of the room. Its single red eye blinked once, transmitting data back to its masters. The true test of humanity's resilience was about to begin, and the fate of not just Earth, but perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. The sky erupted into chaos as sleek, otherworldly craft descended upon the city. Their hulls shimmered with an iridescent light that hurt the eyes to look at directly. Zane, Naya, and Dr. Vin watched from the rooftop of the makeshift command center, their faces a mix of awe and grim determination. "They're beautiful," Naya breathed, unable to tear her gaze away from the alien ships. "And deadly," Zane added, his jaw clenched. "We need to evacuate now. Get everyone to the underground bunkers." As if in response to his words, a beam of sickly green energy lanced out from the lead ship, vaporizing a nearby building. The ground shook with the impact, and screams erupted from the streets below. "Go!" Zane roared, shoving Dr. Vin towards the roof access door. "Get everyone out? I'll buy you some time." "But how?" Naya asked, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. Zane's gaze locked onto a nearby anti-aircraft gun, a relic from before the invasion, hastily reassembled on the rooftop. "The old-fashioned way," he growled. As Naya and Dr. Vin raced to organize the evacuation, Zane sprinted to the AA gun. His hands flew over the controls, muscle memory from years of training taking over. The alien voices in his head shrieked in protest, but he forced them down, focusing on the task at hand. Boom! 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 The gun roared to life, spitting streams of superheated tungsten at the nearest alien craft. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a sound like tearing metal, the ship's shimmering field flickered and died. It listed to one side, trailing smoke and strange, glowing fluid. "Yes!" Zane pumped his fist in triumph. "They can be hurt." His victory was short-lived. The other ships, alerted to the threat, began to converge on his position. Beams of that eerie green energy crisscrossed the sky, forcing Zane to duck and weave as he continued firing. In the streets below, pandemonium reigned. Those who had regained their senses fled towards the promised safety of the bunkers. But others, still under alien influence, shambled aimlessly or actively impeded the evacuation efforts. Naya found herself in the thick of it, guiding shell-shock survivors and fighting off those who remained controlled. "This way," she shouted, gesturing towards a subway entrance. "Underground, hurry!" A woman clutching a small child stumbled, nearly falling. Naya rushed to help her up, only to come face to face with a man whose eyes glowed with that unnatural light. He lunged at her, fingers clawing for her throat. Without thinking, Naya lashed out, her fist connecting solidly with the man's jaw. He went down hard, and she felt a pang of guilt even as she hurried the woman and child to safety. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We'll find a way to save you all." Back on the rooftop, Zane was losing ground. The AA gun's barrel glowed cherry red from sustained fire, and more alien ships arrived by the minute. A near miss from one of those green beams sent him sprawling, ears ringing from the explosion. As he struggled to his feet, a new sound cut through the din of battle. A high-pitched, oscillating tone that seemed to vibrate in his very bones. Zane clutched his head, feeling as if his skull might split open at any moment. All around the city, humans, both free and controlled, dropped to their knees, overwhelmed by the alien signal. It was like the mind control from before, but 1,000 times more potent. Zane felt his grasp on reality slipping away, replaced by visions of vast, incomprehensible beings and planets far beyond human understanding. "No," he growled through gritted teeth. "Not again." Fighting against the mental onslaught, Zane crawled towards the edge of the roof. Through blurred vision, he saw a massive ship descending, larger than any that had come before. Its underside irised open, revealing a pulsing core of energy that hurt to look at directly. With the last of his strength, Zane raised the targeting computer on his wrist. His fingers felt like lead as he punched in the firing sequence for the building's last-ditch defense system, a jury-rigged EMP device that Dr. Van had cobbled together. "Eat this, you alien bastards," Zane snarled and pressed the button. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like reality itself tearing apart, a wave of electromagnetic energy erupted from the building's foundations. It washed over the alien ships, causing them to spark and shudder in midair. The psychic assault cut off abruptly as the massive mothership's core flickered and died. All across the city, controlled humans collapsed like marionettes with cut strings, while those fighting the influence gasped in relief. As the alien craft plummeted from the sky, Zane allowed himself a grim smile. They'd bought themselves some time at least, but at what cost? He staggered to his feet, surveying the devastation below. Fires raged unchecked, and the streets were littered with debris and bodies, both human and distinctly not. And in the distance, he could see more ships approaching, undeterred by the fate of their brethren. "Zane!" Naya's voice crackled over his comm unit. "Are you alive up there? We need you down here now." "On my way," he replied, already moving towards the access door. "What's the situation?" "It's Dr. Vin," Naya said, her voice tight with worry. "She says she's figured something out about the alien tech. Something big. But what? She says it might be our only chance to end this. But the cost." "Zane, I don't know if we can do what she's asking." As Zane raced down the stairs, his mind reeled with possibilities. What had Vin discovered? And more importantly, what price would humanity have to pay for its freedom? The aliens had made their move, revealing themselves at last. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. And as Zane burst out onto the chaotic street, he knew that whatever came next would determine the fate of not just Earth, but perhaps the entire galaxy. The final battle was about to begin, and the universe itself held its breath, waiting to see if the unbreakable human spirit could withstand its greatest test yet. The underground bunker buzzed with frantic energy as Zane burst through the reinforced doors. Survivors huddled in corners, their eyes wide with fear and confusion. But Zane's gaze locked on a Dr. Van, hunched over a makeshift workstation, her face illuminated by the glow of multiple screens. "What's this about a plan?" Zane demanded, striding towards her. Naya fell in a step beside him, her expression grim. Dr. Vin looked up, her eyes feverish with a mix of excitement and dread. "I've cracked it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The key to their technology and our salvation." She gestured to a complex diagram on her main screen. The alien mind control, it's not just a weapon, it's how they communicate. Their entire civilization is built on a foundation of shared consciousness. Zane frowned. "What does that mean for us?" "It means," Dr. Vin said, taking a deep breath, "that we can turn their own technology against them. But the cost?" "Spit it out, Doc," Zane growled, his patience wearing thin. Dr. Vin's eyes met his, filled with a mix of hope and sorrow. "We can create a feedback loop. Use their own psychic network to broadcast the full force of human consciousness back at them. Our thoughts, our emotions, our inner voices, it would overwhelm their hive mind." "But," Naya prodded, sensing the unspoken caveat. "But it would require a human vessel," Dr. Vin said softly. "Someone to act as a conduit, to channel the full mental and emotional weight of our species. The strain, it would almost certainly be fatal." A heavy silence fell over the room. Zane's mind raced, weighing the implications. "So we're talking about a suicide mission," he said flatly. Dr. Vin nodded, her expression pained. "Essentially, yes. But it's our only shot at ending this invasion once and for all." Before anyone could respond, the bunker shook with the force of a nearby impact. Dust rained down from the ceiling as panicked cries filled the air. "They're getting closer," Naya said, her voice tight with urgency. "We're running out of time." Zane closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. When he opened them again, They blazed with determination. "I'll do it," he said firmly. "What? No." Naya grabbed his arm, her eyes wide with shock. "Zane, you can't." He gently but firmly removed her hand. "I have to. I've been fighting their influence from the start. I have the best chance of withstanding the strain long enough to complete the broadcast." Dr. Vin nodded solemnly. "He's right. If anyone has a chance of pulling this off, it's him." Naya looked between them, tears welling in her eyes. "There has to be another way." Another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. Screams echoed from the levels above. "There's no time," Zane said, his voice softening as he turned to Naya. "This is what I was trained for. To put everything on the line, to protect others." Naya's shoulders slumped in defeat. I understand," she whispered, "but I don't have to like it." Dr. Vin cleared her throat. "We need to move quickly. I've rigged up a transmitter that should be able to tap into their psychic network. But we'll need to get to the surface, close to one of their ships." Zane nodded grimly. "Then let's do this." The scene that greeted them as they emerged from the bunker was apocalyptic. The sky boiled with alien craft, their energy weapons carving swaths of destruction through the city. Controlled humans stumbled through the streets, their eyes vacant and glowing. "There!" Dr. Vin pointed to a smaller ship hovering nearby, its underside pulsing with that eerie light. "That's our best shot." They sprinted through the chaos, Zane and Naya providing covering fire against both alien beams and lunging, mindless humans. They reached the ship just as Dr. Vin finished calibrating her device, a mess of wires and circuitry barely held together. "Are you sure this will work?" Naya asked, eyeing the contraption skeptically. Dr. Vin's laugh held a tinge of hysteria. "Honestly, I have no idea, but it's all we've got." Zane took the device, securing it to his chest. "What do I need to do?" "Focus on what makes you human," Dr. Vin said urgently. "Your memories, your emotions, your deepest fears and highest hopes. Let it all flow through you." Naya grabbed Zane's hand, squeezing it tightly. "You can do this," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "Show those alien bastards what humanity is made of." Zane nodded, managing a small smile. "See you on the other side, one way or another." With that, he stepped into the pulsing light beneath the ship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Zane's body went rigid, his eyes flying open as he screamed. It was like every neuron in his brain had ignited simultaneously. He saw flashes of his life, childhood laughter, the pride of military graduation, the horrors of war, moments of quiet beauty. But it wasn't just his memories. He felt the weight of all of humanity crashing through him. The hope of a child taking her first steps, the grief of a widow saying a final goodbye, the fierce joy of victory and the crushing weight of defeat. Love, hate, fear, courage, despair, and triumph. The entire spectrum of human experience flooded through him in a torrent of raw emotion and thought. Above, the alien ships began to shudder and spark. Their perfect formation broke apart as they reeled from the psychic onslaught. On the ground, the controlled humans collapsed, the alien influence burning away under the fire of shared human consciousness. Zane felt his body beginning to fail, cells rupturing under the immense strain. But still he pushed on, drawing on reserves of strength he never knew he had. In his mind's eye, he saw the alien hive mind, a vast, coldly logical network. And he felt it fracture under the wild, beautiful chaos of human thought. With one final, Herculean effort, Zane focused all of that energy into a single, defiant message. We are humanity. We are unbreakable. And this world is ours. The psychic shockwave that erupted from him rippled out across the planet and beyond. Alien ships fell from the sky like rain, their crews driven mad by the cacophony of human voices echoing through their collective consciousness. As Zane's lifeless body crumpled to the ground, the last of the invasion force turned tail and fled, retreating to the depths of space. They had come seeking easy conquest, but found instead a species whose inner strength defied all logical understanding. Naya cradled Zane's broken form, tears streaming down her face. "You did it," she whispered. You saved us all? Dr. Venn stood nearby, her expression a mix of awe and sorrow. He showed them the one thing they could never comprehend, she said softly. The beautiful, chaotic complexity of the human spirit. As the dust settled and humanity began to pick up the pieces, a new understanding dawned. They had faced their greatest threat not with advanced weapons or technology, but with the very essence of what made them human. Their inner voices, once a target for alien control, had become their salvation. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the cosmos, a shaken alien civilization came to a stark realization. Earth was not to be trifled with. For they had encountered a species whose minds contained entire universes, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly unconquerable. Humanity had prevailed, and the stars themselves trembled at the echoes of their indomitable spirit.